Hello, guys. Welcome to Astral Thrive. I'm your host, Shayna Netanya, with
Jen, and this is where thriving is our resistance. And I'm so glad to see you back again here on this Sunday afternoon.
Exactly. Same. How's the weather you're doing, Jen?
As you can see, we have some sunshine for once. It's glorious. It's beautiful outside. The upcoming weather is going to be a little wonky. We're going to have one day of like mid 70s, but then the next day we are going to get snow. So
Interesting.
I don't know what's going on with Mother Nature right now, but
yeah, we're having similar in California. So we've been having a heat wave in like the 80s for the last 2 weeks. And then I think it's like Tuesday that it's supposed to rain. So we're getting the same thing.
I know I can't keep up with it. Like I'm ready to, put all my winter stuff away. And just when I think it's going to be great, then we get snow. So I'm like, no, let me hold off. And then it's cold for a couple days. And then it's like, all right, spring's here. I cannot keep up. Not at all.
I know. So we had no kings yesterday. How was no kings in your neighborhood?
I actually was, observing Shabbat. I did not watch anything news related. I'm very proud of myself. I did not check anything. So really, I'm not sure how large things were around in my area, but let me know what's going on in California.
I have to say, I'm so proud of you for really like having this self-discipline too, to actually spend Shabbat with your family and to really celebrate it. You're really setting such a good example for all of us. So thank you for that.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to. Sometimes setting boundaries is good. I'm trying. So, but thank you.
You're succeeding. And I did see some video from my local No Kings in Oakland yesterday, and I will say this: the crowds looked way smaller than they have the last few times it's happened, which makes me happy. And I'm also seeing a lot more of like the far like communist left propaganda being torn down all over the place in the Bay Area. So that kind of gives me a little bit more hopefulness as well too.
Speaking of communism and so on and so forth, I've been seeing a lot more sympathies towards communism, and I understand like communism in its theoretical ideology. Yes, it sounds great. From someone who has studied Soviet history, we know the pitfalls that can happen or have happened. So it's so fascinating for me to see memes around on social media. Tell me if you've seen these as well. Because the Epstein files were in the United States and not Putin and not North Korea, their form of government or what their government used to be is better than what we have, and absolving all of the atrocities that happened under that type of government just is mind-boggling to me. And just like the sympathizing of Stalin as well is just completely mind-boggling to me. I don't know if you've seen that yourself.
Oh, what I've seen literal like 20-year-olds say this, that communism was never done, quote, the right way, and they will do it the right way. And I also heard, I saw a quote, I can't remember who this was from, but it was a very on top of it quote. And basically the quote was saying that utopists, people that want a utopian society are always the ones that end up de-evolutionizing society into a dystopia because they just are so angry, and because they couldn't have everything they want, they're just going to burn everything down. And I feel like that's exactly what I'm seeing with all the double think as well too. Like, I'll take this issue, the Uyghurs in China, right? So if anyone that doesn't know, there is a small minority of Muslims in China that are literally being put to death for nothing more than their religion. They are put into work camps. They're just not treated equally. And I don't see any of the communist left, who also is very pro-Palestine. Why are they not speaking up for these Muslim lives? Because I believe all lives do matter. I really believe that the Uyghurs in China should be advocated for.
And speaking of advocating for minorities, I think another issue, I just saw this pop up just now. The Pope had made a statement this week, talking about he's very upset about what's going on in the Middle East, rightfully so, but hasn't said anything about what the massacre that's going on in Nigeria with Christians there. Again, the double standard, just this hyperfixation on just Israel is just it's I can't wait for 20 years from now to read books about what has been going on here with all of the 2020 hindsight, and just to get like a really good overview of just how things led to this moment,
This will be a very interesting time to piece apart
yes,
in the future.
Very much so. So I look forward to reading all of the things put together, So our rose and our thorns this week. I just wanted to say one of the best positive things for this week was getting off a political side of Instagram and Reddit. And I literally have been scrolling through recipes for Passover, because Passover is coming up in a couple days. Of course, it has to be on April Fool's, like of all days.
And I saw shout out to Malka, who I see is turning her kitchen over in the process right now. So good luck with that.
Oh yeah, we're like I've been cleaning, and I just been like going out to get some stuff, and I have to say it's been Jewish joy, right? Just seeing all of the really creative ways people have turned matzah into some masterpieces, like sushi-esque, pretzels, their tacos. Like it's very creative, and it was just brought me some joy, because I'm like, okay, I'm going to make something fun for Passover. So that was a really, great positive side of Instagram. And my last positive thing is, my birthday's coming up. So I'm like, what am I going to do for my birthday? Because I can't have a cake because it's Passover. And some people have sent me some places where you can order like made stuff. So they have like a 7-layer matzah cake that you can order, or they have like a tiramisu. So I think I might splurge on that, because I don't think my culinary skills are good enough to make a really good cake.
The tiramisu cake sounds amazing.
I know. So I think I might get that one. But I just want to say shout out to those that sent me all of those messages. It was amazing. So that was
very nice.
Yeah.
Well, my thorn of this week was that, and this is perfect because today our guest is Jodi Taub, and she's a clinical therapist and trauma specialist, and so she's the perfect person for me to talk about this with. But I had sort of a little crash out last week. Anyone that tunes into my Instagram or my threads will have seen it, essentially. But I'm also going to lead this into more of a serious talk, and it was, I do joke about it because that's the way I tend to cope with things, but it was very difficult to obtain help when you're sort of in crisis. And I wrote a piece talking about exactly that, how the expectations that we have for people that are literally in a mental health crisis, that are not organized, are not able to control the pressure or the volume of their voices, things like that. How we misinterpret very short answers, trying to give you what you're needing while they're trying to internally struggle with their feelings as well. I was dealing with all of that, just from the fact that we all live in such a toxic culture for Jews right now. Mm. And so I'm really looking forward to talking to Jodi. But on my rose, I am out of Instagram jail. So I am able to accept collabs again, which has been amazing. And my views did not fall as much as I thought they were. I went from 4.6 million views while I was still collaborating, and it only fell to 2.6 million. So I'm like, all right, I can deal with that.
That's amazing. Like, honestly, from like getting that ding, that's incredible.
Yeah, so I decided to use it as my true metric for what my real views are.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Um, I cannot wait for our guest to come on as well, because as you said, a trauma specialist, you've heard me talk about this before, being an educator and having a lot more students coming in with a lot of trauma, and like, what are the best ways to like know when a student is about to crash out? What are the best responses, an adult can provide, or, if a friend is also dealing with that, like just knowing what are the practical tips, to use when we do have these moments, because we are going to encounter them. And I think it's better to be proactive than being reactive. Because I've seen, students who, have had a crisis, and, you don't want to just have to then be reactive about it. You want to make sure that it doesn't happen. So I'm really excited to speak with her as well. So
absolutely. From with no more ado, let's go ahead and introduce our guest today, Jodi Taub, from Chronic Illness Therapist. Let's go ahead and bring her on. Welcome, Jodi. How's it going today?
Hi, great to see you both on this Sunday. And I heard you talking about the weather, and it's 55 degrees here in New York, and that feels like summertime at this moment. I bet there were some people walking around in shorts. So after a really long winter, I was really excited to have a little sunshine here.
Yes. As someone that used to live in New York, I totally get it. I remember it being like -15 in the winter time.
And we've had a winter.
Oh, totally. So for Jodi, for those of our members who are tuning in that may not know who you are, can you just please give a little bit of a 30-second elevator pitch as to who you are?
You got it. So I'm a private practice psychotherapist, and I've been working for almost 30 years in the field, and I work with children and adults, and I do individuals, couples, and group therapy. I have a subspecialty in chronic illness, which is why you mentioned that on Instagram I will be found under Chronic Illness Therapist. And now I also have a subspecialty in Jewish mental health over the last 4 and 5 years. So 4 or 5 years ago, pre 10/7, I started to notice all of the incidents of anti-Semitic hate, especially here in New York, and what we were experiencing living here in our field, working with some of the patients that I work with. And so I have been sort of 24/7 on promoting Jewish mental health and dealing with stress, but also promoting resilience, especially since 10/7. So that's me.
Incredible. It's kind of interesting how you said that you started talking more about Jewish mental health before 10/7. So, what have you noticed since 10/7? What have been the commonalities among those that are seeking therapy or assistance?
Well, I think it's important that you mentioned that, because, there were a lot of people who were, obviously it's pervasive now in a way that we never could have imagined, right? But things were happening. We didn't just get here. And so what was happening is people were seeing, anti-Semitism at work in their field, some of the anti-Israel commentary and propaganda. And so all of those statements, and it started seeping into school and academia. And so when 10/7 happened, it was a perfect time of the rollover, right? So it was like the catalyst, and it opened up the floodgates. But these things were happening earlier. So I had become involved with the New York Social Work, NAS, so it's the National Association of Social Workers group to combat anti-Semitism. Two of my colleagues started running it, and it was a great place for me because I was able to, talk with other clinicians and other social workers, but we were seeing it in our field. We were hearing the white oppressor nonsense that we all know. I don't have to explain to this audience, but I could say that Jews were white oppressors, and it opened up the doorway for discrimination against us. And so I started hearing all of this pre-10/7. So when 10/7 happened, I already had a foot in the door and became involved with various social work and therapist organizations to help work on Jewish mental health and provide support to families, to individuals, to students, and in various capacities. So I'm glad that I could do something about it. And that's my Jewish resilience. I got to do something about it.
That's wonderful. And that's one of the things I love about, our people is that resilience. What are some of the things that you're sharing with your clients to help them realize just how resilient they are truly?
I think Jen, you had brought this up before about being prepared.
Yeah.
So I think as things sort of trickled in, it's like the losses have sort of like escalated. It might be, oh, my kid in college, or my kids in school are hearing things, or I experienced this, anti-Semitism at my job, or I had the betrayal of a friend who did not support me after 10/7. All of these things sort of crept in. And I think right now the best practice is to start preparing and start having those conversations, so that when you're in a situation where your approach with a conversation, with somebody, with somebody from work, with a friend, you're grounded in your own boundaries about whether you want to engage in that conversation, when to engage, when not to engage, and kind of what you want to say. And so when you're prepped, it's less anxiety provoking because you're not caught off guard. And so I think it's important for everyone to sit down and say, okay, when is it a time that someone is really encroaching on my boundaries and they've said something that's anti-Semitic, and I really need to say something or shut down this conversation because I'm becoming overwhelmed by this. And it could be online. So you might be engaged in a WhatsApp chat, or you're in some sort of group where somebody says something and they've really, offset your boundary. Do you engage in the conversation? Do you say, hey, you know what, it's better for me to sit on this and not say something that's going to be online and I regret later? Or do I decide that, hey, this isn't a space I feel comfortable with anymore, and I'm going to remove myself from the situation?
I think it's really important, like you said, is it something to sit on, or is it something to just remove yourself from? And I noticed myself asking that exact kind of like question when I see a comment on Instagram, or I see something on the news. My immediate response is I want to like say something, because like if I stay silent, I let them win. But I'm noticing now, like, it's very draining. Your mental health, you're just always irritable, you're angry, you're just waiting to like just be rage baited. But like taking the minute to just kind of like take a deep breath and say, do I really need to take up this particular cause? Because I know that there's Shayna, who I'm sure has already written something amazing, and I don't need to do that. I can just support her post. Or do I just remove myself? Like, I just block the account now. Like, you're on my thing, I delete. And I think it's really powerful for people to also, like, it's hard. Don't get me wrong. It is extremely hard. But like what you said is just so powerful. Like, just, do you sit on it, or do you just kind of like take yourself back? Just really resonates with me, especially with the online platform.
Yes. I said, take a 15-minute rule. Give yourself 15 minutes, right? Because sometimes we're responding in the context of hearing difficult information, right? So like if you're responding and you're vulnerable and you just heard of an anti-Semitic incident or something that's happened in the news that's going to either frustrate you, anger you, you're having a traumatic reaction to it. If you take 15 minutes, you can usually make a better decision and say, okay, maybe I'm still angry, I'm going to sit on this tomorrow, or maybe I'm going to respond because I think this is really important. It allows you to reset a little bit.
I really like that. So I work as a case manager with justice impacted folks. That's one thing I always share with them too, is because there's a lot of impulse control, a lot of anger issues. And so I'll share with them, it takes you about 7 minutes to typically cycle through any emotion. So, breathe through it, talk it out, things like that. I've also heard from Jewish therapists, however, that they're also being targeted if they say that, that they are culturally competent to treat other Jews, or if they want to label themselves as Zionist therapists. What are your experiences with that?
Oh boy. I've had quite a few experiences, and I've also done some continuing education around this too, because we have had so much discrimination within the field. I mean, right after October 7th, someone in my internal feed from an therapy association went in, wrote what I had said, found my Instagram account, put like a circle with an X on it, and basically said that I was like a genocide supporter. And so I've gotten it from the get-go. And so many of us have been on these internal feeds where the people who have stood up for everyone else not only didn't stand up for us, but then persecuted us, which goes against all of the ethical boundaries in psychology and also in social work in the helping fields. So Jewish therapists have also been going through their own trauma of feeling like, wait a second, how did the field that we supported, that so many of the different modalities and the different thought practices come from Jewish people and also from Judaism, all of a sudden people are not supporting us, discriminating against us? How do we handle this in real time? And so when we don't have the backup and support of our peers, and I think there's, one is the acceptance of it. This is where we are. And very unfortunately, anti-Semitism has been taught and been pervasive in academia. And then the second piece is, okay, how do I want to handle this? Am I the person who wants to stand up and do something because it feels very important to me that I need to advocate or do something with this? Am I the person who says, you know what, I don't really want to take this on, but I'm going to figure out what my own boundaries are, or not, disengage from a particular group, or set my own limits with my supervisor or with, the clients and patients that I work with, because ultimately none of us deserve or should be discriminated against. And so now we're all having to think about that in a way that has continued, and we're going to have to continue to find our way throughout this.
I think that's been one of the hardest things, is trying to reconcile seeing people that you've been friends with. I've seen many posts circulating online. I lost friends that I've known for 20, 30, 40 years who I thought would stand by me, because we, did Black Lives Matter. We went to Pride parades. We acknowledged Indigenous people's land, and then October 7th happened, and the silence, and like, people are like, what do you recommend to us who are like, how do we deal with the loss? Like, it's just like, it's grieving. It's, we really lost a lot of people. And how do we
yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the most hurtful losses, is that betrayal trauma. It's a betrayal, and it's traumatic, because it's not just the loss of a friendship. It's not just, hey, we just see things differently, but people supported, organizations, groups, thought process, ideology that threatens our livelihood, our existence, our ability to function in society, and ultimately our safety. So if someone is doing that, right, you're crossing a boundary that, how do we still maintain a friendship? And there are some people who really didn't understand it. So I think there's the grays on all of this. There's people who are blatantly, you can no longer be friends with them because they actually are a safety risk or a danger to you in that way. And you're going to have a traumatic response because the loss of the friendship is related to a betrayal trauma, and it runs so deep in a very different way than, hey, we've lost touch, or hey, we got in a fight or conflict. And acknowledging the depth of that is really important. And then the decision to say, okay, I don't think I can still be friends with this person. Now, there are going to be some people that, if they ask the right questions and say, hey, I'm really sorry, I didn't realize where this landed. Is there room for repair? Those people are in a different camp. Yeah. But I think the losses that we've all felt, I think, one, acknowledging that it's a betrayal trauma. Two, acknowledging the depth of the loss. And three, engaging in the connection with other supportive people, because that's the repair, right? So like, as the question you asked me earlier, Jen, was how have you dealt, with other Jewish mental health therapists? That's been the best thing that's come from October 7th, is I have amazing Jewish therapist friends and peers that I'm in touch with on an ongoing basis, and the depth of our friendship through the trauma has brought us, a lot of joy. And so dig into that. Like, that's what we're good at. We all know our special secret sauce for Jews is building community and resilience. And so you build the resilience through that. So I encourage people to get involved with a Jewish group, organization, synagogue. It could be like, all right, I want to do a Jewish cooking class, or I want to, go on a travel adventure, or I'm going to join a synagogue. Do something that grounds you, and then you get to build community from the community that you lost, which is meeting you where you are.
I can't agree with you more. So right after 10/7, one of the things I did, because I lost a large majority of my friends right after 10/7, was I joined a synagogue, and they had a women's group. They do like, it's not just religious stuff. They actually do social things as well. And so I know a lot of Jews who may be, not religious, maybe kind of like, I don't know about that. I would just encourage you also to kind of check it out, And one of the things I was wondering is, it seems like there has been an uptick in just like blatant anti-Semitism, like using the K word, using like big hooked nose memes, like things. I have to wonder, like, are these people that are just doing it because it's trendy, or do they actually feel this way and we're just not saying it because it would have been, socially unacceptable? What are your thoughts?
I think it's both. But I also want to go back to your suggestion about joining a synagogue. I did the same thing this year, and it has been fabulous. And so I definitely encourage people. I mean, they just have inherent social connectivity and groups and things you can get involved in. And it's the easy way versus like being on your phone and being like, which organization do I join and what do I want to do? It's all there. But I think the other piece of this is acknowledging it actually doesn't matter. And I've thought a lot about this, like, well, maybe if their intention is okay, it's okay that they're saying the apartheid, genocide, colonizer, blood libels. Maybe if I understand that this person doesn't understand it, so if they're protesting and they're causing, other students or people to feel unsafe, the person is causing unsafety. Like it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's what they're doing that is wrong. And this is the playbook from Nazi Germany. The same thing happened, as we know, for any of us who have studied that time period. Looking back, how did this happen? Well, it happened because the majority of these societies started to believe the propaganda, accepted some of the discriminatory comments and belief systems. So I think what's happened over time is people are integrating this, they're normalizing this, they're learning it at school. And would they have necessarily been inherently anti-Semitic 10 years ago, 15 years ago without this information? No. But regardless, it's happening. And I think we have to look at it from that perspective, because that's the truth. It's never okay.
What would be a way for us to respond back, and like, what are the most what's the healthiest, most impactful way to respond to these triggers or any incidents that happen? Because I've been seeing online, like, I've been learning new things all the time, but like reactive, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the word. Shayna, we were talking to Owen about this.
Reactivity versus proactivity.
When someone's trying to get a rise out of you, they're being
provocative.
Yes, they're doing it on purpose because they want to get that rise out of you, because then they can make you look bad. So like, how can we make it so that we don't get to that point that we just get so upset that we do lose it or whatnot? What would be like the most what's the healthiest way to
engage on neutral terms? Right. So if you're talking about, for example, like you're in online and somebody posts something and they post something that's upsetting, is it someone you know? Is it a place where you actually could say something and there's some people on there who may listen to what you have to say? Mm-hmm. Or are you posting on a site or on someone's feed where all you're going to get is people sort of yelling back at you. And so you're kind of screaming into the void. So I think in those circumstances, unless it's really important to you and you're grounded and you've made the decision, I want to advocate, I want to speak, I want my voice to be heard. And there's times that people want to do that. And there's times that people don't.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know where you're coming from. And if you're not ready to engage in that, then don't. And also look where it's coming from, right? So like there's a particular person on one of our therapist feeds that no matter when a Jewish person posts anything about something happening, any of the anti-Semitic events, the hostages, Israel, she will come on. I'm saying it's a she. There's a lot of she's in my field, but she'll come on and she'll make an anti-Semitic comment. She will say something that's cruel. She will deny that person's experience. And over time, I think a lot of the Jewish therapists learned, let's not engage with this person because it feeds into this. We can recognize this. But I think, as you were saying, Jen, too, it's in a bombardment. And so we also want to check in with our own emotional grounding. So if we've had a stressful week and you know that your stress tolerance and your levels like a 6-7, probably better to not engage because it's going to activate you. You may become more upset, more frustrated, more anxious. If you're in a space where you're like, I've had a pretty good week, I'm feeling pretty calm, I can tolerate a little bit of this and I want to engage, and that's okay. So I think do a check-in with yourself, see where you are, number one. Number two, look at who's saying something. Is this a place that I want to engage? And three, is this the right timing?
I can't agree with you more. One of the things that I had to admit to myself last week when I had my own little crisis was recognizing that if I were to go outside and to have to, deal with other human beings, it would not be safe for them or for me. And so recognizing what is best for everyone. That being said, I also have to really, wonder, how does all of this prolonged stress for years now affect a person's psyche?
Yeah. I think that's an important point. Is there's a difference between short-term stress and chronic stress, because with short-term stress, we have the opportunity to recover. When we have prolonged stress over a period of time, that's where we sort of get into the emotional and nervous system dysregulation, because we're in a prolonged state of activation. So people might experience anxiety, depression, burnout, feeling disconnected, feeling hopeless and shut down. So I think it's important to recognize that. And that's when you say, okay, wait a second. I realize I've been in this prolonged state. What do I need to do to ground myself, to recover from all of that and repair? And so that may mean I'm taking a break from social media for this period of time. And I tell people to do this all the time. Social media serves a purpose. We would not be here today without social media. And it allows us to connect with people from all over the world and to engage. But there also are times where we need to take a break. And if you find that you're doom scrolling and you're continuing to be upset and frustrated, take a reset. So maybe you consciously say, hey, I'm just going to check my email or these necessary groups, and I'm going to take a break from my feed for a day or two, just to give yourself a reset. And we know through research that it actually works, and it gives people a break from the stress, because anytime you are engaging, we can't control for the stress. You're going to see all the instances. We're going to feel all other, the people that we know who are on our feed and in our groups, we're going to feel their stress and anxiety. And then I think to continue to use grounding techniques that we know that work. So getting outside, sticking with routines, doing joyful activities, using creativity. So engaging in something that feels creative. It could be, an art project. It could be cooking. It could be learning about something. So do something that you love. And the thing I stress the most is community care. So connect with the people that you love. So instead of like doom scrolling, spending a couple hours looking at things and just sort of sitting there, be like, all right, I'm going to call one of my best friends. I'm going to reach out to somebody. I'm going to make a social plan. So do something that's important to you.
I want to also give a shout out to On the Way to Be a Jew. He sent a comment in saying, Jodi, thank you for speaking up on this. As a mental health worker myself, anti-Semitism is becoming cancerous within the field at many times.
Yes. And that's why it's all the more important that, as Jewish therapists, we advocate when we talk about what's actually going on.
So for those of us who are looking for a Jewish therapist, is there a way that we could find more, readily and easily a Jewish therapist? I know for myself, finding a therapist took you're on a wait list for so long. And then my therapist that I have is not Jewish, but I'm just wondering, is there, a conglomerate or an Instagram page that like highlights who might be under different insurances so that, Jews could, make an appointment or, so on and so forth.
So this will be a shout out to some of my colleagues. So there's several different organizations. So one, Gesher Campus Care, and I believe they're just changing their name, but they do offer, they vet for Jewish therapists. They make sure that they are culturally competency trained in Jewish cultural competency. And so that's one place to go. I also will let people know that Psychology Today, which is the largest database of mental health providers, actually does have a listing to list yourself as Jewish. So you can put that in when you go to Psychology Today and actually find a Jewish therapist that does pop up. And so there's also like several different sites that they can look on Facebook. Like there's also the Jewish Therapist Collective. And so a lot of Jewish therapists are on that. That's on Facebook as well. There's Jewish mental health therapists. So there's a lot of searches that you can look for finding Jewish culturally competent therapists.
That's wonderful. And I know that one of the things that's been really helping me to feel more centered is to look for meaning in my life and to see how I can incorporate it more. What are your thoughts in how meaning can play into helping a person heal?
It's huge. So we know that when people are recovering from chronic stress or from trauma-related incidents or events, finding meaning and purpose to it, right? So if we have a stressful life circumstance, you have to find meaning and purpose. Otherwise, you just live with the loss and the grief and the anger and the frustration. So we all have to find meaning to a difficult life event. And that's, with Passover coming up, as I just did a pre-Passover Seder with my family yesterday, it's a reminder of that. Like our Jewish traditions teach us to do that. How do we find meaning in adversity? So I went through this difficult life experience. What did I learn from it? What are my takeaways? How would I do something differently? How is this experience making me more competent? And what do I want to work on in the future?
I have a question. Being a mother, I grew up with a household with a lot of intergenerational like Holocaust trauma. And, I've been trying to work over the years of just not bringing that trauma to my son. I wanted to break the cycle. Now with October 7th, I don't want him to associate being Jewish with like all the anxiety that I'm feeling. And I'm trying to navigate ways to teach him about what's going on. What do you recommend, with young children? So I'm not perpetuating this feeling of hypervigilance and that kind of thing.
So you just reminded me of something, and I have to give a shout out to some of my other Jewish therapist friends groups, and it's related to this too, because I'm working on a chapter with the Association of Jewish Psychologists, and we're doing a book on trauma and resilience, but also the Association of Jewish Psychologists also is a great resource for finding Jewish therapists. And there's also the Jewish Mental Health Collective that provides free support groups, and there's a whole bunch of them on there. So, okay, back to the child part. Okay, so what we have to do is think about things that are developmentally appropriate. And in the same way, think about, I'm just bringing it up because it's Passover, right? So like if you look at the plagues and you're like, oh, look, there's frogs, and you make a puppet, and like, how do we teach kids about our story, right? Most of our story is about struggle, destruction, being misplaced, right? So, but we still are able to teach kids in a way that they understand. So I think it's sort of talking about things in a way that's like, okay, these are some things that are going on in a way that they can understand, in the same way that you would with a Jewish holiday. Find something that's developmentally appropriate that they can understand, but at the same point, make them feel safe at the same time, that it's not a threat. So they're not feeling threatened. So I think depending on what it is. So if there's a conversation now, which unfortunately this is now happening with children at school, where a kid says something really mean and makes an anti-Semitic comment, having that discussion and saying, you know what, I'm really sorry that Johnny said that to you, and that's really mean and cruel, and kids say really mean things. How do you feel about what he said? How did the other kids respond? If this is going to happen again, let's talk about how we can handle it the next time, so that you kind of normalize the experience in terms of how do we address it, and how can I help you work through it so it doesn't feel as scary.
Yeah, I am not a mother myself, but I have a lot of my friends that are. And one of the things I wonder is, how can we instill a sense of Jewish pride in our children, so that when they do go out there in this world, and they inevitably encounter such ugly hatred, that they can still stand proud in who they are. What are your suggestions?
I mean, Shayna, that's the key, right? Is making sure that your kids have the experiences of being around Jewish kids, having that Jewish identity, is going to camp and going to Sunday school and getting involved with a Jewish organization that they can become involved with and make friends, because that's it, right? That's why do all of us endure this? Those of us who are proud Jews, proud Zionists, do this because we know the beauty of it and the gift of being Jewish. There's nothing I'm more proud of, and obviously the two of you too.
Clearly.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have the Am Yisrael Chai podcast. And so if you get that, if kids grow up with that Jewish identity, with the friendships, with the meaning, that's worth all of that. That when the kid at school says to you, oh, like, makes the anti-Semitic comment, the reminder of is like, yeah, they're not as lucky as you are, that you have all your camp friends, or you have all your friends from Sunday school that you hang out with every week, and they might just be jealous of you.
I like that. Before we end our conversation, I was just wondering, for any listener out there who is feeling, exhausted, tired, numb, hopeless, scatterbrained because of all the bombardments of all life and things that are going on in the news, what can they do? What is one thing they could do today to get them in the right direction, to get them out of this kind of darkness?
Start small. So choose, we get overwhelmed when we have to do too many things at one time. Choose one small thing. So choose one small act. So it may be saying, okay, I'm going to do a Shabbat practice. I'm going to connect with a Jewish organization that I'm going to do something that I want to do that provides some meaning and purpose to all of the darkness that's been around us.
That's one lovely. And I want to read one more of the comments here. So from Phyllis says that I enjoy the connections that she's made over at Temple over the last decade, but I do miss the connections I had with friends from different cultures. I don't want to spend time with people just like myself. And I think we can all probably relate to that. Jodi, where can people find more of you on the net?
Yeah. So I think it's deciding. We've lost a lot of friendships, right? Or friendships have had conflict, but it doesn't mean that all these friendships need to go by the wayside either. So think about the friends that may have responded to October 7th in a way that was upsetting, but may not still be in the same sort of activity. And are there some friends where there's a potential to have some repair, where you know that, hey, this is a person I really knew for a long period of time. There was a lot of good with our friendship. Can we re-engage in a way that feels okay and move forward and repair that friendship? Because there may be some friendships where, there's obviously some friendships that are a no-go, but there might be some relationships that you may be able to say, all right, this was specific to this period of time, but I don't see them posting these things anymore. We've kind of moved past this moment. Maybe they have more information versus, watching the news and, posting, free Palestine, that they've moved on from that too.
That's a good point. Because one of the things I've felt very challenged myself is, there's one friend of mine that I've been friends with like a decade, and she got very into the free Palestine and refused to have conversations with me, but she's since been trying to be there for me in the last year. And it's been really challenging for me to let her back in just because of distrust. How can we Like, get over it.
Yeah. Well, I think for that one in that trust it where they're making an effort, it may be to have a conversation to say like, hey, listen, like I noticed that, you know, you must have noticed I put some distance in our friendship and this is why. And if you're interested and you want to learn more and understand why this was upsetting to me and how we can move forward, I'm welcome to that conversation.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Jodi Taub, for joining us today. I really appreciate your time to speak with us.
It was so much fun.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of your day, Jodi. Okay.
Yes. Happy Passover to everybody this week.
Yes. Chag Sameach. Happy Passover,
Woo!
everyone. All right. Well, that was a wonderful conversation. What are your thoughts, Jen?
I love it. I think great advice. Start off small. I loved the slow it down, remove yourself if you need to. Just really, really practical advice. It's hard, but it does work. And I highly recommend, taking Shabbat off and really just not looking at the news and going outside. Now with the spring is here finally, that's the advice I'm gonna take from what she said.
One of the things I really like that she said as well too is really to identify, is this person coming and arguing in good faith? Because I think for so many of us, especially with conversations on the internet, we can gauge whether this person is actually coming to have a genuine conversation or if they're just coming to spew hateful rhetoric, right?
And pretty much I've been following your logic. Like if it's just not even worth my time, just block. And I've been doing, the quick, do they have a profile picture? If not, automatically, I know it's a bot or something. Like, why am I wasting my time? Just block automatically. And I've noticed, like, I've been seeing people argue how I used to be arguing too. And now I'm like, it's not worth it. Like arguing with someone with 5 followers, a non-profile picture, for what?
I know. And this may be like me being like weird or crazy, but then there's a part of me that feels like, okay, they're like all these bots are like using up our energy just fighting with them so that we can't like fight the real enemy, which is like in real life. You know what I mean?
And that's, exactly. Puts things in perspective. And I think, again, getting off social media for even a day, it puts in perspective that this is not real life. There are like, what you see on social media is so hyper fixated because it focuses on your algorithm, your niche. So of course you're going to be bombarded with anti-Semitism because that's my feed. Like I'm trying to combat that. But when I go outside, I wear my Star of David and I'm so luckily, thank God, I have not had to experience such hate, so it's that disconnect as well,
I do think that the internet makes things feel more intense than they actually are in real life for many of us.
Yes. I mean, I'm not saying like anti-Semitism is not getting, it is intense right now. But, right now in my backyard, again, like it's not, I'm not seeing everyone going, Jew, but
totally.
But it does give you like, okay, it's not a representative of the whole society. So
absolutely. I think we have to kind of put things in perspective sometimes, is that when the world can feel very heavy, that it not is as bad as we can perceive it to be, right?
100%. So
wonderful. Yes. Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you for tuning into Am Yisrael Thrive. Where thriving is our resistance. I hope you go out there and take on today and have a wonderful Passover, guys. We'll see you next week.